Ever feel like you agreed to something you later regretted? Maybe just because of how someone asked, like you almost felt tricked into saying
It's
yes.
like our brains just go on autopilot sometimes.
And bam, you've agreed to something you never really wanted. Well, get ready, because today we are diving into the fascinating and sometimes sneaky world of persuasion.
The psychology of yes.
Exactly.
Right.
And we're not just talking everyday influence here, we're going deeper, uncovering the tactics experts use, often without us even realizing.
It's true. A lot of what we do every day is unconscious, right?
Right. So our guide to this hidden world is Robert Cialdini and his book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. Now, what's cool about Cialdini is he didn't just theorize about this stuff.
Oh no, he got his hands dirty.
He did. Went undercover, embedded himself with salespeople, advertisers, fundraisers, you name it, to learn their secrets from the inside.
He was like an anthropologist studying a tribe.
Yeah,
Except this tribe is dedicated to getting you to say yes.
I love that. So let's get into it. Cialdini kicks things off with this idea of fixed action patterns in animals. Those instinctual responses, like think about a mother turkey. They have this hardwired reaction to the cheep, cheep sound of their chicks. Doesn't matter if it's coming from a hidden speaker or even a stuffed animal, they hear that sound and boom, mama bird goes into nurturing overdrive.
Total autopilot.
Exactly. Now, obviously that's an animal example, but get this. Humans have these automatic responses too.
Think of them as mental shortcuts our brains use to make decisions quickly. Makes sense, right? The world is full of information. It's overwhelming. We need shortcuts to function.
But those shortcuts leave us open to manipulation.
Exactly. Someone figures out the right trigger, and they can get us to do all sorts of things.
It's like Cialdini's click word analogy. Someone hits the right trigger, we play the tape, and boom, predictable behavior pattern.
Remember that study with the Xerox machine?
Vaguely. Remind me.
Okay, so researchers had someone try to cut in line to use the copier. Sometimes they'd just say, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" But other times they'd add, "Because I have to make copies."
Did it work? Did
The-
people let them cut in line?
You bet. Just adding the word because, even without a real reason, dramatically increased the chances of people saying yes. Like, because I have to make copies somehow seems like a good enough reason, even though everyone's in line to make copies.
Oh my gosh, that's totally happened to me. I swear, just last week, my neighbor asked to borrow my drill, and he was all, because I really needed to hang this picture up before my family arrives. As if that's the only reason to need a drill. It's like my brain just shut down after because.
See? We've all been there. And it's not just silly favors either. Think about the turquoise jewelry example. They found that when they raised the price of the jewelry, people actually bought more.
Wait, what? How does that make any sense?
It does if you consider the mental shortcut. People often use price as a measure of quality, especially when they don't know much about what they're buying.
So the tourists buying this jewelry, they saw expensive and thought, oh, must be good stuff.
Exactly. Higher price implied higher value, and boom, persuasion through implied value. And it happens all the time.
With everything. Wine, cars.
College degrees. People equate higher price with higher quality, even if it's not always justified.
Okay, that's both fascinating and a little alarming. Like, we're all walking around with these mental shortcuts just waiting to be triggered.
Which is why understanding these tactics is so important.
Okay.
Let's move on to another one. This one's huge. Reciprocity. You scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Ah, the age-old rule of give and take. Like, it's ingrained in us from childhood. You share your toys, you get invited to the birthday party, right? Do a favor for a friend, they're more likely to help you out in the future.
Exactly. It's how we build relationships. But here's the thing. It even works with favors we didn't ask for.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's this study where researchers sent Christmas cards to complete strangers. And you know what? A surprising number of those strangers sent cards back.
No way.
They felt obligated, even though they never asked for that holiday cheer in the first place.
So even if you didn't want the thing in the first place, you might still feel like you got to return the favor.
Wow.
Which makes me think of fundraising. Didn't the Hare Krishna Society totally change their tactics when they figured that out?
They did. They used to be known for, being kind of in your face, demanding donations, which, let's be honest, isn't super effective.
No, not really.
So they completely changed tactics, started just giving people a flower
Oh.
or a small book, not demanding anything in return, just a gift.
And boom, donations went up.
Exactly. Because even if people didn't particularly like the flower or whatever it was, that sense of obligation that now I got to give something back kicked in.
They flipped the script, turned it into a strength, which is kind of brilliant, really. I mean, in a slightly Machiavellian sort of way.
It really highlights how powerful even small, seemingly insignificant gifts can be. And
Oh.
it's not always about money or material things. There's this incredible story from World War I about this German soldier, right?
Yeah.
He captures an enemy soldier, and he's taking him back to camp. And as he's leading him back, the captive offers him a piece of bread. This simple act of generosity, especially in the middle of the war, it really got to him. He felt like he had to reciprocate. But what could he offer in return right at that moment?
Don't tell me you let him go.
He did. He couldn't bring himself to harm the man after that.
Wow. That's
Just shows the emotional power of this principle, even in the most extreme situations.
that story about the bread really makes you think, right? Like about all the times you felt obligated to return a favor, even
It's
if
super-
even if it was something you didn't really want in the first place.
It's a powerful force, and like anything powerful, it can be used for. Well, let's just say not all uses are created equal. The important thing is to recognize it so it doesn't work against you.
Okay, so how do we do that? Do we just refuse all gifts? Become hermits to avoid that sense of obligation? Doesn't sound like a fun way to go through life.
You don't have to go off the grid. The key is being able to tell the difference between a genuine gift and a calculated tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cialdini talks about this, actually. He says, if it feels like a genuine gesture, reciprocate away. But if you get that feeling, that little voice saying, this feels manipulative, it probably is. So just mentally reframe it, see it as a sales tactic, not a generous gesture, and boom, obligation gone.
I like it. Like it's a judo use their momentum against them.
Exactly. Now let's talk about another tactic, one Cialdini calls rejection then retreat.
Okay.
So picture this. Some kid, scout or whatever, shows up at your door, overflowing with enthusiasm, selling candy bars. $5 a pop, right? And you're like, not today. Thanks, though. But then, right as you're about to close the door, okay, how about just $1 for this chocolate bar? It's the last one I have.
Oh, man. I've totally been there. Suddenly that $1 chocolate bar, irresistible. And hey, I feel like a good person for compromising, right?
Exactly. That's the genius of it. You feel like you're in control, like you dictated the terms of the deal, but you were expertly steered toward compliance.
Wow. Didn't Cialdini use, wasn't there an example with the Watergate break-in about how that whole crazy plan, how to get approved?
Oh, right. No, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
That wasn't the first proposal, you see.
It wasn't.
Oh, no. At first, they were talking about wild schemes. $1 million, chase planes, blackmail, you name it.
Seriously?
Yeah. By the time they got around to that comparatively modest $250,000 plan, well, it probably seemed downright reasonable.
Wow. Rejection then retreat on a grand scale. And it worked. On seasoned political operatives, no less.
Which is why recognizing this tactic is so important. Think about it. Dealing with kids trying to stretch their bedtime, negotiating a car purchase. That project your colleague tries to drop on your plate, we've all been there. But just being aware of it, that's your first line of defense.
Okay, I am definitely replaying some conversations in my head tonight.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next principle. Commitment and consistency. I mean, this one sounds pretty straightforward, right?
On the surface, sure. I mean, we all like to think of ourselves as consistent, right? Like we're people of our word. But it goes deeper than that. See, once we make a commitment, especially a public one, it exerts a powerful pull on our future behavior, even if later on we realize maybe that initial commitment maybe wasn't the best idea.
So you double down, even when you think you might be wrong. That sounds less like consistency and more like just plain stubbornness.
It's more about self-image, I think. We want to see ourselves, we want others to see us as consistent, reliable. Cialdini talks about this in the book, uses the example of Chinese POW camps during the Korean War. They would get prisoners to comply with these larger demands, but they started small, really insignificant statements.
Like what? Getting them to agree that America isn't perfect or something.
Exactly. Small, seemingly harmless commitments that pave the way for larger concessions later. It's about getting someone to say yes initially, even if it's to something small. Then you reel them in little by little.
Give them an inch, they take a mile.
Right, right. Except it's not about distance. It's not psychological.
Okay, so it's not just about wartime propaganda. I'm thinking like toy companies, maybe? Don't they create that artificial scarcity around the holidays? To drive up demand.
Oh, yeah. Like they purposely undersupply the stores before Christmas, right?
Right. And then, bam, parents have to buy all these substitute gifts because the must-have toy for that year.
Sold out.
Yep. My parents fell for that every year.
And then what happens? After Christmas, all those ads start airing again. And the kids, they see what they missed, right? So the whole "but you promised" chorus starts up. And the parents, they feel obligated to follow through on that. Well, maybe not so well thought out commitment.
Double the sales, double the profit, genius marketing, or a little bit evil, you decide. But yeah, it totally shows the power of that commitment, especially when it's made publicly. Suddenly you've got all this internal pressure to stay consistent even if the situation's changed. Huh. Makes you wonder how many New Year's resolutions fall into that category. Okay, I'm getting the picture here, and it's making me want to go hide in a cave with a year's supply of canned goods. How do I avoid falling into those commitment traps? Should I just, stop making promises altogether?
Becoming a hermit isn't exactly practical for most of us.
Yeah.
The key here is to listen to your gut. Cialdini calls it your heart of hearts signal.
Heart of hearts.
Yeah, so when you're feeling trapped by a commitment, ask yourself, knowing what I know now, if I could go back, would I make that same commitment?
That's such a powerful question. It cuts through all the mental gymnastics, the justifications, the rationalizations.
Exactly. And if the answer is no, then it might be time to reconsider that commitment. It doesn't make you inconsistent, just.
Wise. You're not breaking your word, you're evolving. I like it. Okay, let's move on to another principle. Social proof. This is all about following the crowd, right?
In a nutshell, yeah. We're social creatures. We look to each other for cues, especially in situations where we're not sure what to do. Think about those laugh tracks on sitcoms. They're designed to trigger that everyone else thinks this is funny, so I should too, response.
Oh, those laugh tracks. I know they work on me even when I know the joke is lame. It's like my brain is saying, but everyone else is laughing.
Exactly. It creates this illusion of amusement.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just get swept up in it. And it's not just humor, right? Think about charity telethons. They spend a lot of time listing all the other people who've already donated.
Oh, totally. It's like, look at all these generous people. You don't want to be the only one who doesn't donate.
Exactly. Or those long lines outside nightclubs. Sometimes those lines are, well, they're engineered to make the club seem exclusive, more desirable.
Social engineering. I love it.
Right. And there's research to back this up. Cialdini talks about this experiment where they planted wallets on the ground. In New York City, some of the wallets had a letter inside saying that the person who'd lost the wallet, they'd already tried to return it once.
So someone had already demonstrated that being honest was the right thing to do.
Exactly. And guess what? Those wallets were way more likely to be returned because it established this social norm. People were basically following the lead of someone who'd already done the right thing.
Interesting. So we're more likely to follow the lead of someone who's, well, similar to us. Like they've walked the path we're considering. Monkey see, monkey do, but with, higher stakes.
And it's not just wallets. It's everything. Consumer choices, decisions in emergency situations. Cialdini even talks about trying to teach his son how to swim. For months, the kid just struggled. He was afraid. Then one day at the pool, he sees a friend of his, another little boy, jump right into the deep end. No fear. And that was it. The fear was gone. His son was swimming.
Wow, that's an amazing story. But it also makes you think, what if the crowd is headed in the wrong direction?
Right. Which is why it's so important to be aware of it. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I really believe it's the right thing to do? Or am I just following the herd?
Such a good question. Okay, now let's get to another principle, one I think we can all relate to, liking. Seems pretty straightforward. We like people, we're more likely to do them favors, right?
Right. But it's not just about charm or charisma. People who, influence for a living, they've got a whole bag of tricks to make themselves seem more likable.
Okay, so spill the secrets. What are these mysterious tactics?
Well, for starters, there's physical attractiveness. Studies show that we tend to see attractive people as more persuasive, more trustworthy, even more intelligent.
Really? The halo effect?
Exactly. It's not fair, but it's true. Being aware of it helps us, compensate for that bias.
Yeah.
Then there's similarity. We like people who are like us, right?
Makes sense.
Similar backgrounds, interests, even fashion choices. Think about how often you see salespeople trying to find common ground with customers.
Yeah. Triggering that we're on the same team feeling.
Bingo. Even small similarities can create a sense of connection, which often leads to more compliance.
So if a salesperson starts gushing about my favorite band, red flag.
I'm just saying, it's good to be aware of it. And then there are compliments.
Yeah.
We're wired to respond to flattery, even if we know it's not entirely sincere.
Who doesn't love a good compliment?
Exactly. A well-placed compliment. Can work wonders.
Bet it can. All right, so to sum up, when someone's trying to sell me something and they're laying on the charm, complimenting my impeccable taste, red flag.
I'm just saying, doesn't hurt to be cautious. And that brings us to association. Basically, we tend to like things that are connected to positive experiences
Mm.
or people we admire.
Celebrity endorsements. If George Clooney drinks this coffee, it must be amazing.
There you go. Advertisers live and breathe this stuff. Celebrities, beautiful scenery, upbeat music, anything to create that positive association.
Clever, but also kind of manipulative, right?
It's all about awareness.
Yeah.
When you see that kind of thing, just take a second, ask yourself, do I actually like this? Or am I just, being swayed by the association?
Good advice. Okay, I'm seeing a pattern here. It's like all these principles, they tap into our unconscious biases, our mental shortcuts. Like our brains are practically wired for compliance.
Well, in a way, they are. Our brains are efficient, right? Trying to conserve energy wherever possible, those mental shortcuts. That's just a byproduct. It's not a problem in itself. The problem is when other people exploit it to get us to do things that maybe aren't in our best interest.
So how do we fight back? How do we reclaim our power?
Awareness is the first step, for sure. Once you understand how these principles work, you'll start to spot them everywhere. Advertising, negotiations, even everyday conversations.
And once we see them, then what?
Then you can make a choice.
Yeah.
A conscious, informed choice, free from manipulation.
I love it. We're not puppets. All right, on
I
that
love it.
empowering note, I think we've done it. We've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of persuasion.
The word of yes.
It's been fascinating, insightful, and maybe a little unsettling, but hey, that's how we learn, right?
Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make choices that are right for you.
Beautifully said. And to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay skeptical, and as always, thank you for joining us on the deep dive.